Today on the Worldview Bros, more on what the 4th of July and the Declaration of Independence teach us about the principles of our country. How should we think about the bad part of our country's history? What do we make of the fact that the person who wrote the Declaration of Independence actually owned slaves? Also, last time, we discussed what the founders truly meant by freedom and equality. Today, we take a look at how we have strayed from that vision on both counts. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We will discuss. Thank you for joining us today on the Worldview Bros.
Good morning, my fellow human beings, and welcome. Welcome to the Worldview Bros. I'm Sal. This is my brother Jim, a.k.a. the Dukinator, a.k.a. Brogo Baggins, a.k.a. Jimbo Shrimp, a.k.a. Butterbeard, a.k.a. Jimmy Coco Bove, a.k.a. Slippin' Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, you're doing great on the list, man. But actually, I do have another. You should probably include also Jim, he of short legs. So I've actually always been very proud of the fact that I can touch the ground without bending my knees.
Yeah.
Until I realized that it's because I have freakishly short legs. So it's actually not really a big accomplishment.
You just have short legs.
Yeah. So it's like you just go down. I mean, no problem. So
yeah. I
don't know if that's significant, but I think, I don't want to be false in my presentation to people.
Right.
I think it's something that people should know. So just wanted to put that out there.
All right. So, all right, guys. So we have a lot planned for you today. Thanks for joining us again. We are continuing the discussion on breaking apart the Declaration of Independence and talking about equality and freedom and really understanding those things that our country is founded on. We also are going to be doing a top 5 today. It's been a little while since we've done top 5. Mm-hmm. And of course, our game, we're bringing back Whisper Challenge today. That's a fun one. It's one of my favorites. And of course, you can check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, right? Subscribe, please. Go and like us, like our Facebook page. We're on Facebook. Mm-hmm. We're on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. And if you have any questions, any at all, concerns, opinions, whatever it is, as long as not anything negative or hate-like, email us at theworldviewbros@gmail.com.
Excellent.
All right. So last time, we really got into the discussion of what the founders really meant when they said that all men were created equally. So, Jim, why don't you kind of lead us into this?
Yeah. So, again, the view of the founders of what equality meant is that they really saw equality and freedom as meaning the same thing. So it was in the Virginia Declaration of Rights where it kind of puts it the way that they really thought about it, that all men are created equally free. So the terms equal and free actually kind of go together. And it simply means it's something very limited. It means that by nature, all mankind, it's not like we're separated into different classes, right? Just like there are different creatures, just as we have undisputed rule over, say, dogs, nobody's going to question the fact that you have authority over your dog, right? And it works out great. Dogs are happy to serve you. Like you throw the newspaper at them and they bring it back, and you can throw it back 5,000 times and they're equally happy to just bring it back to you and to serve you, In a very real sense, that's kind of like a natural master-slave relationship, actually. I know it's jarring to use that kind of language, but I want to make the point. I want to use that language to make the point. Yeah. That there is such a thing as like natural master-slave relationship. It's kind of like the relationship between the master and his dog. Yeah. Okay. The founders are saying that does not apply to human beings.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say,
doesn't apply to human beings.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anything, it sheds light on how awful slavery.
Yeah, how awful it is that you're going to say, oh yeah, you naturally deserve to have governance over this person.
Yeah.
Right. Now, and as jarring as that even sounds, there actually is one instance in which that does happen with human beings. There is an instance where one human being governs another human being without any question.
And that would be with consent.
Well,
right?
No, I don't even mean that. I mean naturally.
Oh, I see. Okay, you're talking about kids.
That's right.
Yes.
Nobody doubts
children.
That parents govern their children. Mm-hmm. They have natural authority over their children. That's a natural relationship.
Yeah.
The relationship of child and parents is a natural one, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All the founders are saying is that there's no such relationship of that kind when it comes to one kind of person and another kind of person, like adult human beings, okay? That's all they mean.
Right.
We are born equally free. And it's an amazing thing that we should be so proud of our country that in the history of the human race, it's the first time genuinely where a country is established under that principle and giving this limited role to government. So that's the other thing, that equality and freedom simply mean that there's no natural distinction between men. That's not to say that we're not unequal in many respects. Some people are super talented in one area, others in another area, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So anyway, we'll get to that a little bit.
And I feel like I shouldn't really have to clarify this, but we'll go ahead and clarify. Now, of course, children does not mean that our children can be our slaves, but
there's more to that discussion.
There's more to that discussion for sure.
But I don't know. Some parents beg to differ,
Yeah,
but
possibly.
That's another discussion. But okay. The point that we're trying to make, like, hey, the Declaration of Independence is written. How does that apply to, well, it seems like there wasn't a lot of equality and freedom that was going on in the founding itself. Like, I mean, how did that apply to women and to blacks, right? And we're just trying to make a very limited point here. The limited point that we're trying to make is to go against what a lot of historians say. A lot of historians actually say that the founders, when they wrote that they actually did not mean when they write this, that they don't think philosophically, that they didn't believe philosophically and practically that all mankind are in fact equal. That they had in mind simply that it only applies to these people voting right now, or it only applies to white men. Looking at all the documents, looking at the founding, that's simply
people
not
that own land.
Yeah, it's simply not true. Okay, now, did they live up to that ideal at that moment in time? No, that's what we need to understand. Like, we need to make these distinctions. So take a look at our previous show to see how we answer how this applies to women. Now, when it comes to the question of slavery, we're going to be kind of brief on this. Look, please don't make a mistake that we're trying to justify what happened here. Not at all. On the contrary, we're trying to say, no, it's unjustifiable, the fact that slavery still persisted in the United States even after the Declaration of Independence. It is, of course, the greatest blemish that we have as a country, okay? But I would point this out, that no country in the world is free of blemishes, okay? Some worse than others. I think it's significant, though, that when you see a country that actually recognizes its blemishes and in the course of its history actually tries to correct it and does, in fact, correct it.
Yeah.
Okay? Obviously, in the Civil War, this blemish that was with us from the conception of our nation came to a pivotal point. Okay, and I think that Abraham Lincoln and the North kind of are fulfilling the vision that the founders had begun in the first place.
Right.
But here's the thing, too, though. I mean, let's take some things in perspective. 1777 in Vermont. Vermont is the first state in the world to outlaw slavery altogether. Okay. Very often, Great Britain kind of gets like the kudos for like being the first nation overall to abolish slavery. Okay. And that's true. The fact is we had this divide in our country. The reality, though, is the North of the United States during the Revolutionary period started outlawing slavery. Why? Because they believe the principles of the Declaration of Independence.
Right, exactly.
There's no question that we had the fight with the South, and honestly, at the moment of the Revolution, Southerners like Thomas Jefferson, they still held on to their slaves, but they actually really knew and felt that they were doing something wrong. It was actually as time grew on and when slavery persisted that the South started to come out with defenses and started come out with philosophies that were justifying slavery as a positive good. Mm-hmm. So people like John C. Calhoun and the whole Confederacy, that's true. Like there was a regression. There was a regression in how our nation was developing. Again, let me put it this way. At the time of the Revolution, the United States as a whole was more anti-slavery than it was a little bit later in the 1800s. Or what really happened is there was a huge divide between North and South.
Right, exactly.
And the South was starting to defend.
As the country grew and there was more people.
So it was kind of, it was a cancer. There was a cancer in the South that kept metastasizing, right? Mm-hmm. And getting more and more grievous, and it required a hard operation, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that was the Civil War, right? But the point is, I mean, I think there's something, again, to the fact that our country went through that and tried to rectify that. I mean, let me look at the stats here. I mean, by 1789, 5 of the northern states had either abolished slavery or set a time frame for slavery to end entirely. Now look at this. By 1804, as early as 1804, that's going to be true of all of the northern states. All of the northern states, 1804, either abolished slavery outright or put the time frame to end slavery. Okay, mm-hmm. And here's what I want to say. Like, let's consider Jefferson. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and he owned slaves all his life. Is that hypocrisy? Frankly, yes. To a great extent, absolutely, that's hypocrisy.
Right.
The only thing I want to show with Jefferson is I just want to show that at the time of the Revolutionary period, even Southerners like Jefferson kind of knew in their heart of hearts that they were doing something wrong, and that they truly believed that when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, there's no doubt that he meant what he wrote, and that he was living this lie in his life, and he knew that. Let me. I'm going to read this in full, guys. Please listen. This is so important. So this is on Notes on the State of Virginia, and this is what Jefferson says about the question of slavery. I'm going to read this in its entirety. And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are of the gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever, that considering numbers, nature, and natural means only, a revolution of the wheel of fortune, an exchange of situation, is among possible events. What he's talking about there is the possibility that the enslaved black people can create a revolution of their own, mm-hmm. and essentially start a war with their masters. That's what he's talking about here. Mm-hmm. That it may become probable by supernatural interference. He's saying God is, if that were to happen, God should, in all justice, be on their side. That's what he's saying. Mm. The Almighty has no attribute which can take side with us in such a contest. But it is impossible to be temperate and to pursue this subject through the various considerations of policy, of morals, of history, natural and civil. We must be contented to hope they will force their way into everyone's mind. He's talking about the principles of the Declaration of Independence. I think a change already perceptible since the origin of the present revolution. He's saying the revolution did start this change in people's minds. The spirit of the master is abating, that of the slave rising from the dust, his condition mollifying, the way I hope preparing under the auspices of heaven for a total emancipation, and that this is disposed in the order of events to be with the consent of the masters rather than by their extirpation. Okay? He's essentially saying, hey, well, look, the way I kind of read our situation, our revolution, I think a change of heart in all of the nation is occurring. And that pretty soon, even in the South, all masters are eventually going to do away with slavery and kind of gradually bring it to a close, mm-hmm. right? The thing that Jefferson was afraid of, the one reason that he kind of still held on to slaves. In another passage, he says that we have the wolf by the ears, right? He has this idea. I think, I don't know to what extent there's justice to this, but the defense that he makes for himself is, it's like you have the wolf by the ears. And if you let go, what if it goes against you? So in other words, he's saying, hey, if we just suddenly free all the slaves, it may well be that they would rightly turn against us and like destroy us or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I'm not gonna go along those lines. I'm not gonna do that. So is that like the way a coward reasons? I think so. I mean, the way that it was working in the North freed their slaves. If he, had really put his mind to it, I think he could have done more, of course, to end slavery or to put slavery in the course of annihilation, even in the South. Yeah. But all I'm trying to say here is that he knew that he was doing wrong. He knew that he was doing wrong, and he knew what the principles of the Declaration are. Okay, so Jefferson is a hypocrite. Okay, welcome to planet Earth, where mankind is fallen, and we very often don't live up to the ideals that we have. Does that mean that the ideals are wrong? Absolutely not. That's the only point that we're making here. So,
and I feel like too, two things I want to comment on. I feel like when you read this, like what I think with what's kind of going on with Jefferson, and this is me again, just my opinion, just kind of speculating. Mm-hmm. Let's say you look at somebody who has like an alcoholic or something like that. Okay. And they know that it's wrong, right? Mm. They know it's wrong, but they're like, okay, so well, I know it's wrong, so you know what I'll do? Instead of having 3 drinks a day, I'll do 1 drink a day. Yeah. Sure. And so it's like that's where. I mean, of course. Like
at a certain point, you have to do more drastic measures.
Exactly.
Is your point.
And so that's the part where, I mean, I won't disagree with people, and I won't, like you said, they're hypocrites, right? Yeah. Because that's kind of, it seems like that's kind of how he handled it. It's like, okay, well, a little by little,
that's right.
Rather than, of course, like some other people saw it and it was taking
boom, advantage of the moment. Like, I think the moment was important. The revolution was an important moment. Yeah. And very often, big things like this kind of have to occur at those big moments. Well, anyway, okay. So what we're going to do now is look again at equality and freedom very quickly. We want to show you how equality and freedom are misunderstood, broadly speaking, in today's society, and how it's necessary for us to go back and study the founders and try to understand the logic and the principles and the nobility of the principles of our country. So the first thing is again, just to say one more time on equality. So many historians and political scientists think that the founding principles are like against each other, that the principle of freedom and the principle of equality are at loggerheads. That's just a misunderstanding of the founders. So one example is political scientist Samuel Huntington. He says the basic ideas of the American creed, equality, liberty, individualism, constitutionalism, democracy, clearly do not constitute a systematic ideology. They do not necessarily have any logical consistency. Joseph Ellis, a famous historian, commenting on the Declaration of Independence, he says, perfect freedom doesn't lead to perfect equality. It usually leads to inequality. But Jefferson's genius, in Ellis's opinion, is that these are just kind of vague ideals that we kind of strive for, and just by striving for them, we kind of end up in good places. But he's essentially saying equality and freedom are at loggerheads, and they don't make sense. And the logic behind this is simply this, that if you really let people be free, then they're going to pursue their interests. They're going to end up in different places in life. Mm-hmm. You're going to end up with rich people and poor people, and therefore, hey, there's no equality. I think this is illustrative. Let's look at this. I'm not really picking on this writer, but this is just kind of typical of writing that we see today. This is from The Nation. This is from Sophia Rosenfeld, writing for The Nation in 2017. She gives an example of how there are just 8 men in the world. 8 men in the world. This is kind of an astonishing figure, okay, but let's look at it. 8 men in the world, 6 of them Americans, now own the same amount of wealth as the poorer half of the world's population, or 3.6 million people put together.
Billion.
Yeah. And she says this, in this context, one can't help but wonder if equality, in concert with rights and liberties, is even a viable starting point from which to address our needs locally or globally. In other words, saying, hey, the ideal of equality that we had from our founding just isn't making sense, how does this figure make sense given our ideal for equality? Mm-hmm. So she says also, indeed, as I write, just a short while into the Trump presidency, we might well ask if this whole Lockean vocabulary has finally been rendered obsolete, a victim of its own internal weaknesses and a changing world. Okay. And let me keep going, because I do think that Rosenfeld here is coming kind of from the left, attacking the founders from the left. This misunderstanding of equality and freedom is also held by many conservatives, and many of them very famous, kind of still also thinking that there's this loggerhead, that equality and freedom are in loggerheads. Harvey Mansfield, very famous conservative, teaches at Harvard. Harvey Mansfield, though I think he's actually corrected, he's kind of changed his views a little bit with time, but in one of his earlier books, he writes, a regime based on the self-evident half-truth that all men are created equal will eventually founder because of its disregard for the many ways in which men are created unequal. Again, basically saying, hey, when we look at the inequality among us, when the founder said that all men are created equal, well, that's not really accurate. That's what he's essentially saying. And again, how are we going to respond here? Let me give another example. Dennis Prager. We spoke of Dennis Prager very positively a few shows ago. Mm-hmm. Here's an example of where he gets it absolutely wrong, in my opinion. What Dennis Prager tends to say about this is he says that people on the left, or liberals, tend to emphasize equality as a principle to follow, and that conservatives emphasize liberty. And Prager essentially implies that the founding of the U.S. gives more importance to liberty and less importance to equality. I don't know. I don't think he has, in both cases, Dennis Prager and Harvey Mansfield, frankly, haven't done the hard work that my dear professor, Dr. West, had done in his career, really looking at every document in the founding and looking at all the history and trying to really make sense of the fact of what they meant by equality and freedom. Yeah. Okay. And again, what everybody's getting wrong here is that the founders never meant equality in all senses, that they simply meant equality, as we said before, just equality in the sense that we're the same insofar as no person has rightful sovereignty over another person without consent. That's really it. It's a very limited claim that the founders are making. Right. As a matter of fact, the founders would say that inequality is a good thing. Let me repeat that, and I say it myself, Sal. Inequality is a good thing. It's just a question of what kind of inequality we're talking about. Yeah. What the founders would say is that natural inequalities are actually a good thing, and that a certain society is actually should try to protect natural inequalities. Let me read from James Wilson, and we'll give natural.
That's underlining natural.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
James Wilson, a famous founder, he says, when we say that all men are equal, we mean not to apply this equality to their virtues, their talents, their dispositions, or their acquirements. In all these respects, there is, and it is fit for the great purposes of society, that there should be great inequality among men, that social happiness, which arises from the friendly intercourse of good offices, could not be enjoyed unless men were so framed and so disposed as mutually to afford and to stand in need of service and assistance. Hence the necessity not only of great variety, but even of great inequality in the talents of men, bodily as well as mental. Okay? There's James Wilson saying, no, actually government is supposed to preserve those natural inequalities that we have among men. Like, how do we make sense of that, I think it goes back to what I was saying about my probably misapplied dream when I was a lot younger of being a famous basketball player.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about this. Think of, like Miss Rosenfeld had said before. She basically just gives a figure and says, "Oh, there you go, inequality. That's wrong." And just to kind of briefly go back to that, the truth is, that seems like a striking figure. 8 people in the world have equal amount of wealth as 3.6 billion people, the poorer 3.6 billion people in the world, and you're like, what kind of a corrupt, horrible world is this?
Yeah, right.
There's no question that there's a lot going on wrong with the world, but I would actually be bold enough to suggest that figure is actually not a problem. And why is that? Here's the point. The world poverty has gone down since the 1800s dramatically. Okay, we pulled this up. Let me go to it here. This graph in particular is from worldvision.org. And this shows us a graph. And the red line shows the population in the world that lives in extreme poverty. Okay, so according to these numbers, and I was checking in other sources giving us similar information. Okay, that in 1820, so in the early 1800s, about 85% of the world population could be said to be in extreme poverty. That honestly, guys, is like the story of mankind. Okay, the story of mankind is one of starvation, is one of difficult lives, short lives. Okay. Okay, but you know what? The Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, and I'm going to throw in also, the revolution in government, the revolution in the enlightened form of government that we get from people like John Locke and like Thomas Hobbes, and especially like the founders of the United States. Give us a form of government where the abilities of men are made to thrive, where the natural inequalities of men are allowed to thrive, as against the old aristocratic Europe, where you were born in this family, you got to till the earth, and you're stuck in the farm. And my last name is this, so I'm definitely an aristocrat, and I deserve to rule over you. Okay, that was all of Europe, and that aristocracy, that authoritarian attitude that people had all over the world, creates crushing poverty everywhere because the natural talents of mankind are not able to thrive. Okay. So what do we see with the American Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment? Look at that red line, okay? As time goes on, the population, the percentage of people around the world in extreme poverty has gone dramatically down, okay? So whereas in the 1820s, like 80-something% of the world is in extreme poverty, today, it's something like 10%. Something like 10% of the population could be said to be in extreme poverty. Okay, look, I don't think that number ever goes down to zero, given mankind being what it is. Okay, but hey, we can have better and we can have worse periods in history, and all of us, today, belly aching about how terrible our society is. Look, I'm with you in so many regards, right? And we can pick apart and we can look at everything that's wrong with our society. One thing that isn't wrong with our society is material prosperity. Holy crap. Yeah. How good do we have it with material prosperity? Yeah. Not only in this country, but more and more all around the world. Again, not to diminish the fact that there are people, even now, in extreme poverty, 10% of the population, okay? But it's getting better and better because of because of the heritage that we have from the founders and what they started that kind of trickled all over the world. Yeah. So,
I mean, it's just crazy to step back and think about how they knew. I mean, that they had to have known that this was so much bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And you try to think of especially for us, in this perspective of teachers, I think it's a good way to look at teaching for us, you know, and it kind of helps us exercise the idea of like this is something bigger than us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a future, you know. We are teaching people that are going to be the future, right? That's like a bigger idea, you know. And like you said it, I mean, like we are so lucky to live in the time that we do.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, someone we really love to listen to is Ravi Zacharias, and he's man, he's awesome. And I was listening to a podcast of his, and on the podcast I was listening to a talk that he gave. He was talking about truth, and he was talking about everything that we've learned all the way up to Western civilization, you know, and he was talking about how, you know, from we learned from the Judeo-Christian tradition, you know, to seek light, right? And from the Romans, we learned how to seek
like rule of law.
Yeah, rule of law.
Yeah,
and then politics from, you know, the ancient, you know, the Greeks.
Oh yeah,
and all this stuff, all leading up to what we get to have. I know, right?
Yeah,
and so it's crazy that, like, I feel like, you know, it's so clear to see that the founders, like, had that, like, they were meant to do that, right? They saw the bigger picture of where civilization was going.
Honestly, it was an enlightened period in history for mankind. Exactly. And my fear is that we're forgetting what these principles are. Yeah. And you know what? Just as easily as we saw that graph just go down with poverty, you know, just as easily it can go back up. Right. You know, because that's the history of the world too. I mean, you have a good at one point of history, then you have a bad. You know, ultimately we are who we are. We know who we are. We know that there's so much wrong, even to the individual level for all of us. It's what we call the human condition. What's my point? My point is that we should never take for granted, you know, when we have it good, and the steps that we need to take and what we need to look at to try to keep it good or to make it better. So.
All right, so now let's get into our game. Today, like we said, we are playing the Whisper Challenge.
Yeah, so I got destroyed last time we did this. I couldn't guess anything, and you guessed everything. So, I can't say I've been practicing.
We're gonna get these right here. I don't remember who went first last time, but I'll go first.
Okay. All right, you got your jam? I can hear it.
Oh man, that's loud, dude. I cannot hear anything. I cannot even hear myself.
Okay, you can't hear what I'm saying.
I can't hear anything.
All right, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Give me liberty or give me death.
Give me liberty or give me death. Come on, man. You're weak. I promise I cannot hear anything.
It's too relevant, right?
Oh wow.
Too relevant.
Yeah, way
a little bit too relevant.
Liberty and in my head, like, yeah. I've been reading so much.
Okay, well, my other phrases were also liberty oriented. So.
You ready?
Well, you got to play it. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah.
You can't hear anything.
Okay.
Oh, I gotta make sure I don't. Okay, here we go.
Tell me when. Okay.
Oh wait, no. I said I was ready, but I'm not ready.
Were you whispering it? You don't need to whisper.
I'm not whispering it.
Okay. It's all for you in my pursuit of happiness. You said
Okay, here we go. I rode the blue tractor.
Wow.
This is so random.
One more time. I told you I'm terrible at this.
I rode the blue tractor.
I'm rude when I put pressure. Go again. One more time.
I rode.
I know.
I rode.
I wrote.
I rode.
I rode. Oh, okay.
The blue.
I rode the pillow.
The blue.
I rode the blue.
Tractor.
Tractor. I rode the blue tractor. Yes, I got one.
Kind of. I spoon-fed it. Spoon-fed it.
You spoon-fed it. Yes, yes.
Here we go.
You good? What you got there? What is it?
I'm good.
Are you sure? I hear a lot of silences in there.
Just don't talk super loud.
Okay. All right. I'll kind of speak into the mic here a little.
I can't hear you.
Okay. So here I come. Evil clowns under my bed.
Edamame. I don't think you gotta do it again.
Evil clowns under my bed.
What?
I
looked at a baby with edamame. I don't know. Say it again. Do it again.
Evil clowns under my bed.
If you build it, they will come. Dude.
Oh, I got you.
Do it one more time.
I got you. Okay. Evil clowns.
If you're loud.
Evil clowns.
Evil doubts.
Evil clowns.
Evil loud.
Clowns. Clowns. Clowns.
Louse.
Clown.
Clouds.
Clowns.
Evil clowns.
Evil clowns under my bed.
Evil clowns under my bed.
Yeah. Hey, I spoon-fed it. I spoon-fed it.
Yeah, you did. All right, your turn.
Yep. All right. Go for it. Oh, wow. That cranked it up a new level. Okay.
Dwayne Wade. Hold on. Dwayne Wade does not deserve the 06 championship.
Dude, what the freaking what is this, a novel? Dude, come on, dude. You got to shorten that up.
Okay. Dwayne Wade sucks.
21 sucks. 21 sticks. 21? Did I get that? No.
Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade.
Sucks.
Sucks.
Dang it, man. Come on. I still spoon-fed.
Yes.
All right, so that's our game. Again,
I
comment.
I think I won this time.
I don't know.
No, maybe a tie.
No,
actually.
yeah, no.
I think
I did win. I don't know.
On two of those,
see.
we kind of spoon-fed it to each other.
That's true. That's
So,
true. But
yeah.
the first time I said Dwayne Wade did not deserve the 06 championship.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a little too long, dude. I was so certain. I was so certain you were saying 21. I was like, oh, I'm getting it. I was like, he's saying, oh, 21 socks.
Dude, what's the one that you had to spoon feed that I had no idea at first? I was saying edamame.
Oh, yeah. What did I just say? Oh, the clowns, the evil clowns under my bed.
Evil clowns under my bed. Wow.
I have a thing about clowns, guys, as do many people.
Yeah.
How can you not? What the heck, man? Who thought of freaking clowns?
Yeah.
Just tell me why.
I know, it's stupid. And they're creepy. All right, so comment below. Tell us who won. Please, more game ideas. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Maybe would you rather next time? I don't know. Tell us.
We'll see.
I'm feeling would you rather. I like it.
Sounds good. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah, so we're going to talk now about freedom, right? So again, how do we get equality wrong? I think we totally, in large part, we get the idea of equality wrong today. And also then the idea of freedom. And we're going to see a few examples. So what did the founders mean by freedom? Let's just reiterate. It's kind of tied to the same idea of equality. Freedom, the way the founders understood it, is kind of like our common sense of understanding what freedom means. Freedom honestly just means, hey, you're not allowed to like do anything to me. Okay, it's what a lot of philosophers would call negative freedom. Freedom means that you're free from other people's violence. You're free from other people's authority without your consent. right? And that's tied to the whole thing about our natural rights,
Yeah.
right? The fact that we have our natural rights kind of means the same thing as that we have this freedom, okay? Nobody is allowed to apply coercion upon us, whether it's physical coercion or whether it's also mental or coercion of thought, right?
Yeah.
For instance, nobody is allowed to use force to bring us into a certain religion or anything like that. Okay, that's freedom. It's the way we typically understand it. Good old American freedom.
Right.
Okay. Here's the thing. We think that freedom can be understood in two correct ways, and freedom can be understood in two incorrect ways. The first correct way is the way the founders see freedom, and that is the freedom of the Declaration of Independence. That is what the founders are promoting as an end of government, is to secure that idea of freedom. But even the founders, and John Locke in particular, had another idea of freedom that's more ennobling. Okay, there's a deeper meaning to freedom. The deeper meaning to freedom is essentially living up to your human nature. Yeah. Fulfillment, human fulfillment is the same thing as freedom. Think about that. If you're not living up to your fulfillment, if you're doing something wrong, for instance, maybe you're addicted to alcohol or something like that. You know how we say that we're like enslaved to alcohol, like we can be enslaved to our passions, right? So the more noble meaning of freedom is that you're not a slave to anything wrong, but that you're actually living life correctly, and that's a more that's a higher ideal or a higher meaning of freedom in a more ideal sense.
I feel like we use the alcoholic.
Well, yeah, it's the go-to. Yeah. In my case,
we're not alcoholics, by the way.
In my case, it's addiction to Magic the Gathering, which thankfully I've been. I'm like 3 years.
I'm recovering.
I've been Magic the Gathering free for 3 years. I'm happy to tell you, and I'm going strong. So.
I like to think of this as like a godly freedom, right?
Yeah.
And it's we're created, we're living to that, to our purpose, to the nature of how we're created and what we were created for.
Yeah. And this is what John Locke says this in his second treatise of government, that freedom in this higher sense means a correct subjection to the appropriate laws that are over you. Yeah. Okay, just a little bit of technicalities here, so you guys know about John Locke and the state of nature. What John Locke would say is that if you're in the state of nature, what law are you subject to? No law, because there's nobody putting authority over you? False. You are under a law. You're under the law of nature. In his way of viewing it, it's like you're under God's law at that point. So if you're in the state of nature, not in civil society, if you're doing things that are legitimately wrong, like murdering people or whatever, doing any kind of thing that goes against human nature, you are not free. You're you're enslaved to your evil passions. Okay. And one reason that we go into civil society is that it makes it easier to combat those evil passions that we have. Right. Okay. Yeah. What if you are in civil society? If you are in civil society, then freedom means that you're going to be subject, yes, to the civil laws, but then the civil laws are kind of like beneath the natural law as well. It's just kind of a more direct application. Yep. So anyway, this idea of freedom is not what the founders wanted government to ensure. John Locke, the same thing. John Locke is not saying that government needs to step in and make sure that everybody is living up to their full human potential. No, he's just saying, no. Okay, we're just going to say that freedom means this, like, first idea of freedom of nobody having coercion over you. Okay. Right. Oh, what about the big questions in life? How am I supposed to live my life? Well, you're going to be free to figure that out. Government might give you some ideas, might try to give a platform where that can occur. Okay. So again, to clarify,
as long as it doesn't contradict what the Declaration of Independence says.
Yeah. As long as you're not hindering other people, right? Other people's rights. So the classic idea of my freedom ends where the other person's freedom begins.
Exactly.
Right. Again, to clarify one more time, the founders and John Locke say that we need to give government a very limited role. The limited role is the first idea of freedom, okay, not to coerce on people's natural rights, but even though they do believe that there's a way that you have this more noble kind of freedom where you're living up to your full human potential, it's not going to be the job of government to do that for you. Okay,
Exactly.
You have to live your life, and you create societies, and you build your family. You build on your communities on your own. Okay,
You build your faith. And
you attain that higher freedom, which is to fulfill our nature.
Mhm.
Okay, now
Exactly.
two incorrect views of freedom. One incorrect view of freedom is always present in every epoch of history, and that is, oh well, freedom just means that I can do whatever the heck I want. You can say, oh, well, perfect freedom, that means that I could go murder somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem, guys. If that means freedom, then none of us are free, because as soon as you're murdered, well, there goes your ability to be free. I mean, so, and moreover, let's not go straight to murder, okay? But also just like not at all being careful as to like your morals, like doing things that are that kids are going to look at you and going to get a terrible education if they follow the way you live. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what traditionally everybody distinguishes liberty from libertinism, right? Libertinism means, oh yeah, just wherever I feel like, with no regards to our common humanity, with no regards to with seeking goodness. All right, so that obviously is always present, and hey, we fight that ourselves. Like we resist the temptations to fall into this kind of libertinism ourselves every day. The second incorrect idea of freedom, and this is the one that I'm saying that is becoming more predominant, and that we've actually seen now in our history, especially in the 20th century, the way that our government has changed in many respects. Yeah. The idea of freedom as a fulfillment of our needs, whether those needs are objective or subjective, okay? So this is kind of tied to postmodern ideals, right? What's a postmodern ideal? That you give meaning to your life, right? So we spoke before that the other idea of freedom is giving fulfillment to our human nature, right? Okay, well, postmoderns are going to say, okay, well, I'm going to make that whatever I want. Whatever I say is my fulfillment. Well, that's my fulfillment, right? And really, for me to be free, that needs to happen for me. And if my vision of how my life is supposed to go is not somehow given to me, then I'm not free. Mm-hmm. That, believe it or not, is an idea that is very prevalent in our world, okay? So look, forgive me for just making up something extraordinarily comical, or seemingly far-fetched. If I suddenly say that it's my dream to be a ballerina, okay, if I decide right now, my dream is I want to be a ballerina. Mm-hmm. If that somehow is not done for me, right? Maybe I kind of take some steps to do it, okay? But if my government, if my society is not taking active steps to provide that dream for me to come true, it means then that I'm not actually free, okay? If that's my desire, then freedom means that desire needs to be attained. Mm-hmm. You think I'm making this up? I'm really not, okay? I'm going to show you some examples of how.
You'd be a beautiful ballerina, Jim.
Oh, yes, thank you. But the thing is, we'll see more prevalently. We see this with things that might be considered necessities, but and some things that are more controversial that probably a lot of people would disagree that is some kind of a necessity. Yeah. So one example I have here is Justice Thurgood Marshall's dissenting opinion in Harris v. McRae. So this was a 5-4 decision that where the court upheld the constitutionality of the Hyde Amendment in 1980. So if you're not familiar, the Hyde Amendment, it was passed in 1980. This is where Congress, obviously this is post Roe v. Wade. But here, Congress is saying that federal funds may not be used to fund abortion, with the exception of where the mother's life is in danger, or in the case of rape. So the Hyde Amendment was upheld by the court. So the court is saying, yeah, that's fine. That amendment is going to take place, and as of now, that's still standing. That government funding is not used for abortions except for those certain scenarios. Now, we still use taxpayer money, for instance, is given to Planned Parenthood, for instance, but no money is given directly in the case of a mother wanting to get an abortion.
Right.
So anyway, the point here is not to rehash abortion. The point is simply what Thurgood Marshall's dissenting opinion is here, which is actually very common in a lot of opinions of the court. And we can look at many other cases where this kind of rationale is used. So the gist of what Justice Marshall says is that a denial of a Medicaid-funded abortion is equivalent to denial of legal abortion altogether. Okay, let me say that again. What Justice Marshall is saying is that if your abortion is not funded, then you can't really say that you actually had the right to abortion because it wasn't fulfilled for you by the government. Okay? So that's a new idea of liberty, a new idea of freedom. The idea of freedom here is that, I have a want. Whether we can debate whether that's a legitimate want or not a legitimate want. I have a want, and if government isn't going to make that come true for me, then I wasn't free in that case. I wasn't free to exercise that right. Is that what the founders thought freedom was? Far from it. No way. I mean, we're not in Kansas anymore when it comes to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And look, this is prevalent. It's not just that. A good example of where we see this fomented by our government is with FDR. So FDR's second inaugural address very famously calls it his second Bill of Rights. Okay. So here FDR says in his second inaugural address, 1944, as he leads to his kind of proposal of the second Bill of Rights, he says that necessitous men are not free men. That's it right there. Necessitous men are not free men. If you have needs that are not met for whatever reason, then you're not free. And what's the job of government? Well, freedom. Hey, the Declaration of Independence says that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the way that our government works today, guys, is that government has an interest. Maybe it's not possible to make everybody's dream come true. Think about that. We live in a government now that is operating under the assumption that it has an interest, or that it's going to try to make everybody's dream come true. So that means that the government is constantly failing because it has what kind of a goal? It has an infinite goal.
Yeah.
Okay. This is like in math, like dividing by zero, guys. That's how messed up our government has become.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at some math going down and suddenly you see division by zero. You're like, that's a problem. We should recognize this is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, like, and we talked about it too. It's like in a perfect world.
Uh-huh.
Ruled by a perfect
by angels,
sovereign, by angels, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great.
Everyone's dream would come true.
No, right. And as a matter of fact, sorry.
But it's not. I mean, like it's a world with imperfect men.
Yep.
In office, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
no, and look, here's the thing. Like what FDR goes on to say in this second Bill of Rights proposal, these are all good things. I mean, we're not, it's not like he's not asking for abortion here. He's saying, the second Bill of Rights should include the right to a remunerative job. That's hard to say, remunerative job. That means a job that gives you money. A decent living. Do you want a decent living, Sal?
Right, of course.
Is that an appropriate goal for somebody to have? Mm-hmm. Is that a legitimate need? Yeah, it's a legitimate need. Okay. Adequate medical care, right? Yeah. there's a lot of that going on right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And he goes on to say that if the American government should fail to provide these things to the people, we will have, this is what he says, we will have yielded to the spirit of fascism. Okay? We're talking 1940s. He's basically saying that we're going to be like Adolf Hitler if we don't make it our business to provide these needs to all people. FDR. He has no clue what the founding is all about. Okay? Mm-hmm. Here's the point. If you have a natural right, we talk about natural rights, and then there are made up rights. Okay? You don't have a right to be given, you know what? Let's go with that one. Adequate medical care. You actually don't have a natural right to be provided adequate medical care. What are you saying? We can't get, no. Of course you have a right in a sense that it be done for you. You don't have a right that it must be provided for you. You have a right to get it. You have a right to seek it out. You have a right to pay for it. Okay? You actually don't have a natural right to be given certain medical care. Here's why. Listen to this. Here's why. If we grant that you have an inherent natural right to be given adequate medical care, that means that doctor across the corner is naturally a slave.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you have a natural right to certain medical care, that means that the doctor is actually naturally a slave. We can go down the road. I mean, same thing with just food. So yes, food is a rightful need. It's a natural need that people have. But if we want to say that you have a right to be given sustenance every day, right? Do we have a right to sustenance? See, the language, I recognize the language of rights tends to be problematic in the founding. And some people criticize the founders even for just going with that language because we kind of get a little crazy with that language. Yeah. And we think that now we have a right to everything, you know?
I have a right to walk these streets. I have a right to do this and that. Oh, gosh, I can't.
I know.
And so I think that's why it's so important to really, really think about these things and read about these things.
Yeah.
You know, and why we're talking. This is why it's a big question for us. You know, you might be wondering, are we just doing this because we enjoy talking about it? I mean, yes, that's part of it. But the other part of it is that this is a big question. This is a big thing. Yeah. That that people should be encouraged to really look at.
I want us to be aware of the principles of the founding, not, because I think that they're true, and I think that they're the reason why we are such a great country. Mm-hmm. Look, let me go back a little bit too. Like, in a broader sense, even in the founding period, ultimately the objective of our government, if you want to say that there's one particular objective, it really is the happiness of the people. Yeah. Okay, it really is to have prosperity, to be happy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Looking for the best way for that to happen. Yeah. The best way for that to happen is to give government a more limited job. That's the whole point. Right. Unleashing the natural faculties of people is the best way that that's going to happen. Okay. Mm-hmm. If we start restricting our faculties, okay, if we start forcing a certain equality, disaster occurs. I go back to my basketball example. I'm very short. I'm 5'6". I think Muggsy Bogues. Was Muggsy Bogues also 5'6"?
I think so. 5'6" or 5'8".
Okay. Yeah. So if we lived in a world where our desires were forcefully met by the government, then I say, government, I want to be in the NBA. Okay? Government is going to say, you know what? We have a lot of needs out there. Everybody has something that they want. So you got to hold off for a second. Okay, so I hold off a second, maybe later on once there's a huge influx of taxation, okay. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you know what? I think we can finally get to it. So we're going to impose this on the NBA, that they're going to have to accept into the NBA people who want to be in the NBA. All right? Yeah. So I get in there and I suck, right? You're like, this doesn't make it. Trust me, this is this is where the logic goes. It's just that it's never going to be pushed to its ultimate conclusion, but this is pushing it to its ultimate conclusion, right? So I'm pushed into the NBA, and now the NBA just sucks, right? Instead of, how about we allow the natural faculties of men to go their way, right? What do we say the founders? Not only were they enforcing the equality that they were talking about, but actually also defending natural inequalities, okay? Allowing for actually Muggsy Bogues to get in there. Because how did Muggsy Bogues get into the NBA?
He's just a really good basketball player.
He's just really good, okay? He practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, and he earns his way into it. Mm-hmm. And guess what the NBA is? The NBA is glorious. It's great, okay? Yeah. But if you start tweaking it, if you start saying that we have to meet people in their desires and that government is going to enforce these things, guess what that is? That's enforced equality. Yeah. Enforced equality is an artificial equality, and it leads to bad stuff. Like yeah. The NBA would really suffer if I were to be forced into a team, into the Dallas Mavericks or something like that. Yeah. Okay. And that would suck. You. Yes, of course. Okay. So, and by the way, you're like, oh man, well, that's really mean to people who are not going to have the means for medical care. Guys, read into it. I want you to read not only my professor's book that I showed you, the Political Theory of the American Founding. He also wrote another book called Vindicating the Founders. And it shows you that even in the founding era, of course, we thought of people who were going to be in dire circumstances. Do we have an obligation to help people out who are going to be in legitimately dire circumstances? Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Even in the time of the founders, there was always an idea of a safety net that was required for people who were going to fall in the cracks of society. Like the idea ultimately was that families would help each other out. That society, that communities would help each other out. Churches, okay, but where people who are missed even there, okay, there are going to be safety net programs for those people. Okay, so I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have programs like that. I'm saying that our government shouldn't have the ideal that it's supposed to meet people's desires, whatever they may be. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the point. That idea of freedom is a bad idea of freedom. It's an inherent impossibility to fulfill, and therefore it's obviously not natural. It's obviously not correct.
I just had this picture of wanting a need, and I got this picture of showing up really early for the DMV and sitting in line. Yeah. And just waiting, and if you get there too late, you're just waiting in line all day.
Oh yeah.
Just waiting for the government to meet your need.
Yes. I know.
Oh yeah. Man.
So imagine they're in charge of all of our medical care. Imagine the government in charge of our medical care instead of allowing the natural talents of people to flourish with the free market.
Yeah.
It's just
right. Mm-hmm.
It's just a no-brainer. So.
All right, so let's get into our segment Top 5.
Yeah.
All right, so Jim, today you have our Top 5, and why don't you enlighten us with what that is
Right,
today?
So this Top 5 is probably only relevant to our Dallas audience. I want to do the top 5 roller coasters at Six Flags over Texas in Arlington.
I mean, people come from out of town to go to Six Flags.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully that might be the case for you. So, all right, top 5. We'll start with number 5. On number 5, I have Batman, and Batman is a great ride.
My very first roller coaster.
I think the curious thing about Batman is you have to be in the very front seat. There's a huge difference between the very front seat and anywhere else on Batman compared to other roller coasters. Do you think that's true?
True, especially if you are not in the front, but also, you're in anything but the front and the middle.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
If you're on the
side, you still get a little bit of.
If you're on the side and you're not in the front, you're
Yeah.
still getting a pretty cool experience.
Yeah.
Not as cool as it is being in the very front.
Yeah. All I'm saying is it's always better to be in the front no matter what the roller coaster is. But with the Batman, it's especially important because your field of vision is just gone almost anywhere else. Yeah. And I just love it there. I mean, you really, I love hanging. I love roller coasters where you're hanging like that. Yeah. You really feel like you're flying. So I love it.
Some of the scariest ones, but because the feeling of like you're going to fall.
Yeah, I like it.
No, I like the Batman.
Okay, so number 4 is the Texas Giant. And it used to be like my favorite for a while. But, just the last couple times I've gone to Six Flags, I just realized what's in my top 3, But this...
It's been closed the last few times.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
But anyway... change whenever you ride it again.
This is a number 4. Here's my point. 1 and 4 for me are like so close. 1 through 4 are pretty close. So... Wow. It's kind of weird for me to say that the Texas Giant is number 4 because it's such an amazing ride. Yeah. I don't know. It starts with a super steep drop, and then it has like these turns where you're like probably like even more than 90 degrees. Like you're almost kind of tilted, tilted down this way. I don't know. It's really cool, and it's smooth. Compared to the old Texas Giant, it's not all bumpy. And, great roller coaster. Okay, number 3 is one of the new ones at Six Flags, the Riddler.
Which I have not. I've not been on yet.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I know. Our next time, we got to ride it.
Oh, I should also mention that I haven't been on the Joker because it hadn't been going. So. Yeah. But anyway, the Riddler, man, is just... I'm surprised that I like it so much. It's really just a pendulum. It's a pendulum that goes back and forth. Like it's kind of like that.
But also
like the pirate
circles.
ship. Yeah, it's doing circles, but not very fast. Ultimately, it just allows you to get like different angles, I guess.
That's a big add, though.
I know. Yeah,
it's
because you get different ways.
I mean, that's what makes me think it's not completely different than like the ship, going back and forth.
But I mean, it's a big reason why.
Yeah, you're in it's a circular ride, and you're moving as you're turning. That's just a different.
I thought I wasn't gonna like it because I don't typically like that ship ride. It's like whatever, you just go like that.
That's what I'm saying. That probably made a huge difference. For
and also the fact that size matters. Like it's just a big pendulum, so you're like going way high. And I mean, if you're kind of facing this way, you just look up and all you see is clouds, man. It's just amazing. And then you just feel yourself falling. Yeah. And the fact that it's such a large pendulum, in the middle, you're going friggin' fast. It's like you see that ground coming, you're just like going so fast. I think they said something like 77 miles per hour, which is very, very fast for a roller coaster. Like I think that's close to how fast the Mr. Freeze gets.
Mr. Freeze, I think, is 85.
Oh, 85. Okay. Number 2 is Mr. Freeze. So I think a lot of people might have Mr. Freeze as number 1. It's kind of close for me, but I'm going to say number 2. It's such a good ride. And it's just like 45 seconds long. The whole ride is 45 seconds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So for those who haven't been on it or don't know, it's so cool because you start in a tunnel and then it just suddenly just shoots out. Like you're not starting from a drop. It's just using engines to suddenly you just shoot forward super fast, and then you go from there. You go straight up vertically, and then down, and then I don't know. You go up and down a few more times.
Something like that.
Oh, dude, it's so exhilarating, that one. I love it so much. And then it kind of holds you, that point where it holds you a little bit, and you're just facing straight down.
The thing, it doesn't really hold you, right? It doesn't stop.
It stops for a little bit.
Does it stop?
Yeah, it does.
It seems like it does, like it's still moving.
No.
And then falls.
No, there's a definite hold.
I couldn't remember.
There's a definite hold for just like 2 seconds.
Okay.
And then you fall again straight down, and it's beautiful.
It does, but because it's not very long, the hold, it feels to me like when I ride that, it feels like it's like
it's more continuous.
Like a continuous right. And then fall.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm getting it right. I think it does hold you. Anyway, but it's pretty great.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, number one is the Titan. You know, it's just so masterful. I mean, you just start driving up to Six Flags and you see that big guy there. Like, gonna get on that. So.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, of course, I haven't been on the Riddler, so
Right.
So for me, it would be all of those in that same order, up to 4 for Batman, and then 5 out of the ones I've been on. That would probably be. I think would put. No, maybe I'd keep it about like where you had it, and then adding, for me, well, the flashback's not even there anymore.
No, it's not.
You know, and I love the flashback, or Runaway Mountain or something. You know,
so. But again, with the Titan, dude, I mean, that first drop, how incredible is that drop?
Yeah,
it's just a beautiful drop to start with. You know, at the bottom of that drop, you feel like you're getting crushed. You're getting a lot of G's at the bottom of that drop. Then now on the loops, on the horizontal loops, is this true of you guys? Like, is this true of you? Like, I get that gray out there. Like, I see my field of vision narrow. Does that happen to you?
Maybe. I can't really think about it.
I see my vision failing there. Like my blood, and the blood is kind of leaving my eyes, I guess, a little bit. So getting closer to a blackout. Like, you see my field of vision narrowing because of the G's there.
Well, it's crazy for me, like the feeling of like, the force is so great. Like when you're like have your
it's like
exactly.
your hands get stuck.
Your hands up and you're just like, I can't go.
I
you
can't
know,
move.
like
I know.
It always makes me think that like, oh, it's on purpose so that you don't hit your hand on something. Obviously, no. It's just because you're going so fast.
Oh, dude, and then like when it holds you, and then that second drop where if you're on you have to be on the left seat when you get on the Titan. Fight for the left seat because that second drop where you kind of like lean out this way. Oh, it's so great.
That's awesome.
Okay, now
can't wait till we go again.
Most disappointing ride at Six Flags is definitely Pandemonium.
Oh yeah.
Previously known as the Tony Hawk, back in the day. That ride is so pathetic, man.
It's really dumb.
Like, it looks like it's cool. So it's the one where you have the 4 seats and it kind of goes around, but it's a roller coaster. Like, it looks like that could be good. And I think they could have made it a lot better. It's just that it's so wimpy with the drops, dude. Yeah. It's just like it's like, almost like a kid's ride.
Yeah.
It's so pathetic. They could have done that. They could have done that a lot more exciting.
Yeah.
And now, honestly, it's just taking up room in the park. Like, I'm never getting on that again.
I know. They need to either change it up or just get a new...
Yeah. A new ride, yeah. I mean, I kept giving it, like, a second chance. Like, maybe it's good. Maybe it's not like I remembered. No, that was the worst.
Here's a fun thing. What, like, DC character would be cool to add, like, there? Like, a roller coaster. Like, can you think off the top of your head an idea?
Dude, Wonder Woman.
A Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
So what would the ride be if it's a Wonder Woman ride?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. Just maybe a kind of traditional roller coaster. Like, for instance, you know how the Superman in San Antonio is a really cool ride where you feel like you're flying. You're on the side of a cliff and everything.
So do something like that.
And the Superman in Arlington is just up and down.
Right.
So maybe Wonder Woman is large, huge drops. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know, something. I mean, because she flies, right? Does Wonder Woman fly?
She flies.
Yeah, she flies.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yeah, something like that.
Or maybe it's like Lex Luthor roller coaster, you know, and it's like, I don't know what you'd do. Like, maybe it's like
you got some kryptonite.
I don't know what.
Oh, well, you know, okay, well, how about this? Like, in the original Superman, I don't know if you remember seeing the original Superman, but he has like 2 missiles go out, like, I guess, nuclear warheads, and they launch, and then Superman has to go stop them.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe a roller coaster where it's like with you have like a missile theme going.
Oh, and you're like on the missile. And
maybe you're like on a missile. You shoot out or something. Yeah. Like that. I don't know.
Or I could see like something being like super scary, like Doomsday. You know, and it's like all these crazy drops and twirls and spins.
Dude, Six Flags. I mean, destroy Pandemonium. You've got some nice real estate there.
Yeah.
Let's get a better ride on there.
Yeah, so. Definitely. Let's sign a petition. Let's start a petition.
Let's do it.
All right, so that was a great top five. Great top five. So we love Six Flags Over Texas. If you've been to Six Flags Over Texas, make sure to comment. Let us know what your favorite rides are, what we missed. Maybe you're into some of the other new rides or other rides that are there that are great too.
Again, we don't know about the Joker, and
that's true.
I didn't mention Superman. I don't know if Superman is somebody else's favorite. For me, it's a little too basic. It's just like up and down.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So again, do that on our comment section, maybe on Facebook or on Twitter, Instagram, or email. Please email us.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's the worldviewbros@gmail.com.
Yes, exactly. And also, just make sure to check out our other videos. We going all the way back to episode 1, human nature. We talk about happiness. We talk about a lot of other cool questions, important questions. So go check out our channel and make sure to subscribe.
And we're on podcast form now. We're on iTunes.
Exactly.
So now you can listen in the car. I know our shows are kind of long. So if audio is better for you on iTunes, look us up right there. Or Spotify. Yeah. So, hey, Sal, it was awesome talking. I mean, you know that I'm all about America, I mean, these are some topics that I love. I mean, I'm so happy to live in this country. I love the principles of our government. The true principles. You have to dig, guys. You have to dig deep and look at them. It's a good founding, despite our blemishes. And it's okay to be upfront about what those blemishes are. You're not going to find any other society in history that is without blemishes. So this notion that we have to have a perfect past in order to be proud of our country is just, I don't know, guys. It's just not realistic. And it's not, I don't think it's the right way for us to think. So you guys enjoy the 4th of July. Okay, get yourself some apple pie, whatever you got to go to Six Flags. That's a pretty American thing to do. What else do we need? Some watermelon slices. What do we need? Hot dogs. Okay,
some freedom.
Get yourself some freedom. And go to that fireworks show. Get yourself a blanket, and just like.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for joining us here on the Worldview Bros. Have a good one and catch you next time. And remember, freedom.
Yeah, freedom is too precious to give up on.
Freedom is too precious, exactly. And so is truth. See you guys.
So, what do you think about life? Let me look at these things again. Okay. 5.
Sal's intro. Quickly pick up where we left off last time. How should we think about how the DI relates to slavery? Then the 2 ways that we may so